do that. Excellent. Because I always find if I don't record right away and then we get into a great conversation, then it's like, oh, all right, let me just pull up my thing. All right, perfect. Excellent. All right. So, hey, everybody. My name is Jason Wendroff Ronicki. I am a somatic grief therapist, and I am going to be talking at the Grief Awareness and Education Conference, which is on Saturday, September 20th, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Time at the Mark Twain House in Hartford, Connecticut. You can get your tickets at gaec.eventbrite.com. The link will be in the comments. And the Grief Conference, the Grief Awareness and Education Conference, aims to provide meaningful insights and strategies to navigate grief, loss, and bereavement within the context of personal and organizational change. Through inspiring presentations and actionable takeaways, we seek to foster a deeper understanding of these universal experiences and empower attendees to embrace change with resilience and empathy. And today I am so excited because I love having open conversations about grief, loss, and physical health because that's my jam. I really believe that they're all connected together. But today I'm going to be talking with Dr. Vasanth, and I'm going to probably massacre your name, Vasanth, because I apologize. Kainkaryam, and you're a triple board certified physician in internal medicine, pediatrics, and obesity medicine, and the visionary founder of 4 Elements Direct Primary Care and Wellness Space. You have a background spanning clinical care, healthcare leadership, startups, and correctional medicine, and you blend science, soul, and systems to deliver a truly personalized care. That's awesome. That's amazing. You integrate allopathic, integrative lifestyle, and precision medicine guided by your 4E philosophy: engage, educate, empower, encourage. And you're a TEDx speaker. You're a podcast host and a children's book author. And you're a proud girl dad of 3 and a husband to a fellow physician. That is like just your life experience is quite impressive. So tell us, first of all, before we get into a little bit about the conference, tell us about your 4E philosophy, because I absolutely love that.
Yeah, I think a lot of it, first of all, thank you. Thanks for having me here. As we talk to people on stages of change, right? That's really where like a lot of this comes from. And, the trans-theoretical model of change where when you go from here, pre-contemplative, contemplative, so on and so forth. So that's where that 4E philosophy comes from, right? So number one is engage, right? You have to be willing to engage with your patients. You need to create a safe space to have that relationship. So that starts everything. The next is educate, right? Knowledge is the foundation of everything. To be able to have the conversations, to be able to question each other, to be able to challenge mindsets. Then engage, educate, empower is when you now say, okay, here are the tools, you can do it. We will be there with you. And then the last piece is the encourage, where they're on the pathway. They're doing what they need to do. They're doing what they're on their way to reach their goals, and they just need that continued support to be on there, right? So our role evolves with our patients, right? First is sort of where our hand is out there, and at the end, we're by their side, cheering them along as they're sort of continuing their journey. So that's the order of the elements.
Well, and I absolutely love that philosophy of medicine, that you're like kind of co-creating your client's health rather than you're the doctor telling them what to do and then they go and just do that thing, which may or may not work necessarily, but you walk hand in hand with them on their health journey. That's just a beautiful concept, and I something that I really truly believe in 100%. And so you're going to be the keynote speaker at the Global Awareness and Education Conference. How do you embrace change, or how has your practice embraced change over the years?
It's a good question. I think change, um, for some of us, change is the only norm that we have, right? And I think we're in a world that is rapidly changing. I throughout life, I've had certain experiences where I've had to force myself to change. For example, and I've shared this with Kate, where, when I was 17, I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer. And so, you go through your own grieving period, you see what your family goes through, you figure out how to see a life beyond where you thought it may end, where your fears are, and so on and so forth. So I think that change becomes, and then I think for the other piece that was sort of unique for me, I feel like, being born, raised American, but born Indian, you're sort of constantly figuring out like what parts of what cultural pieces am I going to make myself to be, right? And you begin to say, I'm gonna make this a little bit of this, a little bit of that. So you kind of create this path from nothing. And I think change has a lot to do with life putting circumstances at you that you may not be prepared for, and then you deciding how am I going to make this a part of me, and what am I going to see that future as? And so, even with our practice, we started off. I went from being a C-suite executive, having 8 directors reporting to me, and all the docs and PAs and everyone was sort of in my org chart, to saying, I want to start my own practice. I'm going to be a one-man show. I'm doing everything. I'm mopping the floors, cleaning the toilets, making calls, marketing. So it is a big change, but at the same time, it's a change that, you figure out, look, if I want this to work, I have to go through that process. And now we've evolved, right? So we've gone from a team of one to a small team where we have many people. We have people who are international, we have people who are local, and so we're constantly, you have to evolve, right? And you have to figure out, what do my patients need from me, how am I going to help best give them the best of myself, and that means drawing lines at times, saying these are my boundaries, and at other times it means I'm breaking these boundaries because they no longer make sense.
I always like, as you're talking, like I always have like that chicken and the egg question, like which comes first? Like does the change, like does our identity change happen first and then our body follow, or does our body change and then it forces us to change our identity? So it's like that which comes first kind of question. Does one cause the other, or do they both kind of happen at the same time?
I think they can both cause the other, right? And I think, you can, a person can change that then causes things to change afterwards, or your environment, right? I think there's so many things, and now I'm getting all philosophical, right? That are
I
that are very cyclical,
know.
right? And so now I know what you meant. That things are very cyclical in nature, where things, they're all interconnected. And so, you have to then figure out, and sometimes it doesn't really matter, to be honest,
Yeah.
what caused the change. The ultimate result is the change is happening. What are you going to do with it?
Right. Yeah, yeah. And I like to look at more like relationships, right? Like it's like when we change our thought, our cells have to change. And there's like scientific proof that this actually happens. When we can change how we think about something, it changes our vibrations, and that changes the cellular structures. But also we can live a healthy lifestyle, and that can change the cellular structures, which then in turn changes the way we think about things. So I always look at it as a relationship. When you change one, the other one has to change, and then it's like this kind of counterbalance, so that this way you're always embracing change, because there's nothing constant other than change.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it's a cause and effect. And one might say, I'm not doing anything, but inaction is also action.
Yeah.
And there's always going to be a response to something.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and there's always like, even when it comes to like physical health, too much of, sometimes too much of a good thing is also not so great, so we have to find that middle ground. And I think that's absolutely, amazing. And just the way in which you approach your clients, and that if they're healthy, then you're doing a good job, rather than it being part of that sort of sick care model that so many physicians follow.
Yeah, I think it's about being healthy, but it's also anticipating when you're not going to be healthy, right? And so, for example, we've got some patients who we've done some testing on where their risk for Alzheimer's is very high, right? And so now you have to begin to say, how do we now begin to think ahead? What else can we do? How can we,
Yeah.
with what we can, how can we change the path, or alter the course that we may be heading on, right? And so I think change is an interesting one where there's an element of passiveness where you have to say, this happened, I have to respond. And then there's also this element of free will and activeness to say, okay, I'm going to do what I can to direct the change in a certain way. Whether I will be successful or not, I don't know till it happens,
Yeah.
but I have to do what I can.
Right, you have to take the chance. If you don't do anything, right, just inaction is a choice as well. I see many people today, I well, and I'm watching even some of my family members kind of go down that road of like you could see where their physical health is headed and they're making the choice not to do anything about it. And that's sometimes very difficult to watch and observe, especially being part of the family member, right? Like so we have to make sure we're taking those precautions.
Yeah, I think those are all, and I think one of the interesting pieces I find that as a society, while we're changing so rapidly, I feel like even with younger children, we're not necessarily doing as good of a job of teaching them resilience when it comes to change. And I've got three kids. I see them with my own children, right? Where, the slightest the slightest negative event puts them back so much more. And you have to begin to say, okay, how am I going to build resilience, right?
Yeah.
Because things are going to happen. And, I tell people, if you're going to ask for something, don't ask for, challenges not to happen. Ask for the strength to go through the challenges
Yeah.
and be there on the other side.
Well, right, because the strongest wood comes from the trees that have undergone the most wind, because the wind forces the tree in order for it to survive, it has to get stronger. We all need challenges, whether it's grief and loss, whether it's a physical, diagnosis, we need challenges in order to grow. Because if everything was hunky-dory all the time, there would be no opportunity to learn new skills and figure out new ways of being. And I'm a big proponent of let's figure out what our challenges are so that we can be resilient and go through them. And we have to build up the resilience like a muscle. It's not something that necessarily comes to us naturally.
And if you think about it from a science standpoint, right, just from biological evolution, it's those when the environment or species have been put under challenges, those that have adapted to the challenges have survived.
Yeah.
Those that have not, right? And so I think if you really want to go very crudely, we see it in the world all around us, right? Like the tree and certain species that are extinct or not. And so I think as humans, we're in a very unique position to both individually and society to say, what am I going to do to ensure my survival, to ensure my contribution to the world? And that means facing those challenges ahead so that you can be there tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it even goes down to our modern day lifestyles. It used to be we had to like if we couldn't remember a movie, we had to like think about it for a little bit rather than going to the Google and we need to give our brains the opportunity to work itself out a little bit and rather than going right getting the answer right away. And so I try to do that in my own personal life, as best as possible until that threshold hits, and I'm like, all right, I got to go to Google. But
Correct.
but I
You got
give
to know
my
your limit,
yeah.
and saying,
Well,
all
and
right, but then,
I think of as a kid, I remember all the phone numbers of like, because we had to physically manually dial the telephone growing up. And now I don't even like, I'm lucky I know my own phone number because everything's saved in a contact. And if that disappears, I'm in trouble because I don't really know phone numbers now. So, because I haven't given my brain the opportunity to kind of do that anymore.
yeah, I'm going to share a quick funny story since you mentioned it. But my dad had always taught me when I was younger to memorize my credit card numbers.
Hmm.
And so I once was flying for a job interview, mind you, from Hartford to Las Vegas, and I lost my wallet in Hartford Airport. I didn't know that. And I had, this was pre Apple Pay, blah, 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 And so what I did was on the flight with my memorized credit card number, I bought internet because I knew how to buy it with my memorized credit card and was emailing the people I was supposed to meet on the other side. And that's how I was able to communicate and find ways. So, It's funny to this day. I joke around. I'm like, I don't know why I memorized my credit card numbers, but you never know when
Yeah.
when you need it.
100. Well, and that goes to like just our habits were more manual, I think, back then. Now that everything is sort of more, and I'm sure that provides some challenges even for the physical body because it's not getting quite as much movement as it did at one point. Like people are sitting at computers for 8 hours a day. They're on their cell phones, and that I'm sure provides some physical challenges that we've never seen before.
Correct. Correct.
Cool. So I want to just thank anything else before we sort of wrap up? Anything you want to share with the people that are coming or considering coming to the conference?
I think I think resilience is the key, right? And I think, as part of embracing change is resilience, both physically, mentally, psychosocially, spiritually, whatever layer. So I think really excited to be a part of this year. Last year, unfortunately, I couldn't attend, but honored to be speaking, to be helping challenge what people are used to thinking, so that we can all be pioneers of change together, both at the personal level, but I think also in my view, at the health system level to say, well, how can this be better than it always is, or that already is?
And I love that message of resilience because I know for me and my own grief story that I mean it's what made me resilient and made me who the person I am today is through that resilience that I gained through learning to deal with my own grief. So I can't wait to hear you speak at the conference and meet you in actually in person rather than these little boxes. So thank you so much for taking the time and speaking with me today, and we will see you all at the conference.
See you there.
How do I stop the recording? Oh, there it is.